Coming up on All About Android, it's me, Jason Howell, not joined this time by Florence Ion or Ron Richards. They both have the night off. Instead, I've pulled two amazing guests from our list of amazing guests and brought them on at the same time so you know they're not the same person. Matteo Doni and Juan Bagnell join me tonight. We talk all about foldables all across the board. Samsung's upcoming foldable event tomorrow. OnePlus playing the spoiler for Samsung's foldable event with their own foldable teaser. Pixel's foldable dream and if it even exists at all. Plus, we answer your emails and talk about a whole lot of things that are not foldable related up next on All About Android.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is Twit.
This episode of All About Android is brought to you by Hover. Whether you're a developer, photographer, or small business, Hover has something for you to expand your projects and get the visibility you want. Go to hover.com/twit to get 10% off your first purchase of any domain extension for the entire first year. Hello and welcome to All About Android, episode 537, recorded on Tuesday, August 10th, 2021, your weekly source for the latest news, the latest hardware, and the latest apps for the Android faithful. I'm Jason Howell, and you're not Ron Richards and you're not Florence Ion, because both of them are actually out today. So, first of all, we miss you. We hope you'll come back next week. Flo, I hope you feel better. Ron, I hope you have a good dinner. We do miss you. But with that out of the way, we've got not one but two amazing guests tonight. Introducing first, in the left corner, it's Matteo Doni, the return of Matteo. How's it going, Matteo?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me back.
As always, a pleasure to have you on the show, sir. And especially, like, this was kind of last minute because I found out about some of this stuff tonight, or earlier today. So thank you for sacrificing your sleep once again, even though this is the part of the show where you tell me actually you're up this late and it's no big deal. But I know it's a big deal. It is to me anyways.
Thank you.
Anyway,
it's always a big deal to be on All About Android.
There we go. Okay, I like how you spin that. Also, introducing in the right corner, the return of Juan Bagnell, somegadgetguy.com. What's up, Juan?
Hey, so Jason, we don't get to do the show together very often, so this is weird, kind of fresh, and this is kind of fun. Can I say how silly pants excited I am to be on with Matteo? The episodes when you guys were doing the App Arena, I was always excited to see what he would bring for goats. Those are always my favorite episodes. So while I very much enjoy our conversations, Jason, I'm kind of getting a little nerd Twitter-pated.
So okay, so is this the first time you guys have met? Like been on like a live stream together, or?
Yeah, I think this is the first time we've had a chance to talk. I can't think of any, or maybe even any trade shows where we would have run into each other.
Yes, I think apart from CES a few years ago, that this is the first time we've actually spoken. We have lots of friends in common. I subscribe to you on YouTube. We're in the same circles, but it's great to be on with you. And as I was saying to Jason earlier, this is great. We have had the chance to create the Courage Port Triumvirate.
That's right.
We are
united.
Three enthusiasts of the Courage Port.
And also just with all love and respect, if Ron ever catches this, we'll maybe throw a plug or a shout out to Ron's hearing health, and that hopefully he finds his way to healthier and happier hearing solutions that probably involve some kind of universally acceptable port that everyone can jump on board.
Although I'm feeling a little outside of this triumvirate, because as much as I love and will eternally appreciate the analog port, the analog hole, whatever you want to call it, I've really come to enjoy my Bluetooth earbuds.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with enjoying some Bluetooth earbuds. It's just right audio tool for the right audio job, and
that's true.
This is an accessibility conversation that is getting ever more precious when we start talking about high res and lossless and spatial audio and all of these fancy new streaming services that now our phones can't properly use.
Yeah, it is a bummer. So yes, I do appreciate having the option, but I'd say 90% of the time I'm reaching for the Bluetooth, the wireless options, just because at this point, the convenience, I find myself in more situations to benefit from the convenience than I do situations to benefit from the audiophile, sit down and actually listen to this song really closely and be really, really engaged with the music to a level where I hear the difference between the two, if that makes sense. But hopefully we can get the wireless spec to a point to where it's competitive. And I don't know that it's necessarily there yet, but that's a story for another day. But we got a lot to talk about. Actually, I'm looking, I realized that I mislabeled this top block. Well, no, I didn't, because it's sort of hardware-y and sort of newsy, but let's just stick with it with the news, because I think that's a nice blanket term. Burke, it's time for the news.
The number one news and things on Android News.
Okay.
I love it. It's a goat.
Yep. I really appreciate the effort that went into that. Thank you. Thank you very much, Burke.
Oh, thank Victor. But you're welcome.
Oh, and Victor.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Thank you, Victor.
Victor's writing all of Burke's material. All of Burke's best material has a phantom writer behind
Except
the
he
scenes.
didn't write my awful text today. So my script.
That's okay. We'll forgive you. Let's see here. Okay, so first of all, this is a story that has multiple angles here. Smartphone sales reports. Not the sexiest thing to start a show off with, but I think it paints an interesting picture. First of all, there's a counterpoint report that I saw that for June 2021 that shows that Samsung and Apple were actually passed by Xiaomi for the first time in top global smartphone brand, according to Counterpoint's report anyways. Xiaomi sales grew 26% month over month. Its fastest growing brand for the month. Of course, there are a number of reasons you can point to here, just to name a few. The decline of Huawei. Huawei's been a powerhouse for a long time, and just everything going on with the ban, the trade ban and everything in the U.S. and all of the pressures that's placed on Huawei has kind of removed or at least limited their success here. Also, Samsung's own declines due to, yes, supply constraints, because everybody's feeling the hit there as far as hardware is concerned. But also the second report by Kawoom Securities, some place that I've never heard of before, but doesn't matter. They detailed how sales of Samsung's Galaxy S21 generation of devices sold 20% lower than the S20 generation in the same time frame, and 47% less than the S10 generation. So you can kind of see a little curve that's dropping down as we go over time. And Juan, you know all about this because you wrote all about it. So tell us what you think about it.
Well, it's a really fascinating market to try and watch right now, and this is the first year in a while where I've gotten to spend some significant time with Xiaomi products, Mi 11, Mi 11 Lite, Mi 11i, and just seeing like this is phenomenal competition, and it definitely seems to be resonating in a number of regions around the world where Xiaomi has picked this up. And they don't have any market presence in the United States. It's an incredible sales achievement, especially in this economy, to hit those numbers. And at the same time, I think we've seen a trend in Samsung products that for what we would consider the mainstream premium tier solutions over the last couple of years, Samsung really hasn't found the thread or found the plot to inspire a lot of consumers. They seem to be slipping with what makes their products exciting. They're trying to push more people to foldables, and these bending OLEDs is the next like profit motivator for their component business, but that's not really garnering the same kind of excitement. So this is kind of a double whammy year. S21 sales are low, much lower than expected. There is no Note, so we don't. The Note has always been a smaller seller, but that's still a millions of units smartphone, and I think it's going to be highly unlikely that foldables are going to make up that difference.
Yeah. So what do you think about this, Matteo? Do you think so Matteo, I'm curious to get your take on this aspect of Juan's kind of write-up. Juan, you made the point that a lot of reviewers in the tech press focus so heavily on the premium level. I know I'm totally guilty of that. I get swooped up in the excitement of it, because
I'm definitely speaking from experience there as a reviewer, knowing that a lot of our coverage and a lot of our viewership comes from the most exciting elements. You know, like I go to my Nissan dealership and I lust over a GTR, but I leave with a Sentra. You know, like we're all a part of this apparatus. We're all a part of this machine.
Yeah, and as tech enthusiasts who have access to the latest and greatest, it becomes exciting for us as tech enthusiasts and also tech reviewers to get access to that. So, you know, you make the point in your article that it's easy to make that premium flagship to elevate it to this ultra important status. Yet the percentage of sales that these devices are getting compared to the rest of Samsung's fleet, let's say, is pretty small. It's not necessarily meant for the average consumer. Matteo, what are your thoughts there? Like, where do you stand as far as how Samsung is doing on marketing its premium devices to, I guess, the right category to profit from it?
Yeah, I totally agree with Juan on this one. As in, Samsung are great at marketing and giving out an impression that their Halo products are everything everyone wants. But the blockbuster is actually these devices, the Samsung A series. These things are offering great value for money. Arguably, they're giving you 90% of what the S20 series or the S21 specifically this year gives you at a fraction of the price. And most people, let's face it, can't really afford the Halo flagship products at this point. That's one of the reasons that late last year, the S20 Fan Edition or FE did so well in terms of sales. And also just looking at other competitors like Apple and even Google themselves, the super premium smartphone is not where the real win is in terms of profitability as well. It's that $600-700 to $900 price bracket. That's where most people will get to, especially in markets where consumers tend to buy their devices on finance or they're part of a mobile phone plan, where the real cost is a monthly amount rather than what they're actually paying up front for the device itself. So for Samsung, I have to say the S21 series is obviously not selling as well as expected. We've seen this from multiple sources, multiple reports, but also just from analytics. If you have access to analytics of a major website, usually you do see those flagship devices tick up in the Google Analytics rankings. The S21 series, as far as I can see, has not done that.
So Matteo, I gotta jump in here. I'm sorry. I've got a little bone of contention to pick with you here. In your sort of summation of this, when we're looking at the commentary surrounding average consumers, I would say a Galaxy A72 is 110% of what you would get from a Galaxy S21. It's kind of startling. I mean, when you really look at the consumer experience, and for every reviewer, where I've been guilty of this too, and I work really hard against putting this kind of language into my reviews of expensive devices now. We start talking about average consumers, but the experience in the mid-range is more feature complete. You're more likely to have things like headphone jacks or memory card expansion. We've had the trickle down of all of the fancy technologies, higher refresh rate displays. You're apt to get much better battery life because you're not using the most premium and thirstiest and hottest running CPUs and GPUs. For everything that average consumers say that they care about, good cameras, great battery life, good connectivity, feature complete media consumption capabilities, I think the experience is overwhelmingly better on Galaxy A than it is on Galaxy S. And then the price is just a bonus. Like the price is just a nice perk on your way out the door.
Yeah, I'd say the other main thing from a usability standpoint that for me is very important is that whilst the S21 series kept on going with these curved screens, from a usability perspective, the A series shunned that and went for flat screens. And I think there is a real benefit to that for the average person in the street who is going into a shop and buying a phone and using it during their daily commute to and from the office if they are traveling. Yes, I agree that the mid-range is where the exciting space is at the moment, and especially with more of a trade-off to make. There's more diversity in the choice, which is great to see. Not only from a brand perspective, but even within the different brands, there's lots of choice, especially with Xiaomi, which in a way took Samsung's carpet bombing approach to the market at a global level and have been reaping the rewards of that. Last time I was on All About Android, we talked about the Redmi Note 10 5G and the Xiaomi or Poco M3 Pro, which are 5G, which are essentially the same device, but they're being marketed at different market segments with different branding.
So, okay, so all this, I love hearing you guys go back and forth on this. It's great. It's like I can spectate for a little bit. So now that leads to, it's interesting that we're talking about this because now we have one of Samsung's big events, which, by the way, Samsung doesn't really hold these whiz-bang capture everybody's attention events, or do they? And the media just doesn't care for like the A series. I feel like the A series comes out and it's muted.
I don't
comparatively
know. I mean,
speaking,
Jason, if you don't mind as one podcast host throwing to another podcast host, because I would actually be kind of curious to hear your thoughts, because as you guys have been cross-pollinating on different shows on the Twit network, over the same time period, over these last 6 months, Samsung actually sold more phones year over year, but a smaller percentage of them were Galaxy S. Over the same time period, it seems like Apple also saw some success selling more iPhones year over year from 2020 to 2021, but moved a much larger percentage of people up to the iPhone Pros. And so to your talking point right there, do we feel like there's just this emotional component that's missing from Samsung messaging?
That's a really good point. I mean, and you contrast both of those together. And yeah, a part of me isn't surprised, because it really does seem like Apple is, at least right now, Apple is really able to prove to their core users the value of upgrading to their top of the line phone. There's a lot of excitement excitement that I feel did used to kind of be there for Samsung, and Samsung started kind of grasping and trying to figure out like, oh, well, maybe we've plateaued because the standard sandwich phone, glass sandwich phone isn't good enough. So what are we going to do? Now we're going to do the foldables. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe they've lost kind of the view of what the true user really does want. In focusing on what they expect to be the future, which we're going to talk about in a second. That's a really good perspective on that. I hadn't really considered that, but you're right. Apple does that well, and I feel like Samsung used to do that well, and I don't know that they're doing that as effectively now.
Because I think you're spending that much on a phone, there's probably more of an emotional component for a lot of those purchases than the real sitting down, brass tacks, rational justification of the price. I want to feel good about this.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, I feel Samsung was on that pulse. And I think in my article, my theory, because again, I don't have data to back this up. This is just my feels on it. I feel like Samsung lost sight of that. I feel like they took their eyes off the Galaxy S prize. And I think consumers are kind of feeling that when every time you see something Samsung, they're throwing a folding piece of plastic in your face. Well, why should I get excited about this another Galaxy S that I might be buying? What sparks that Marie Kondo joy? It doesn't seem to be there.
Right.
I would say one thing is obviously that's quite a US centric view. There's been a lot more happening in the world apart from the pandemic this year, and that's especially in geopolitics. India, which is an enormous market, had a border dispute with China. There was a scuffle, and there was a very big pushback on Chinese brandings or Chinese products being purchased in India. Xiaomi have managed to weather that due to the fact they actually assemble and manufacture many of the parts of Xiaomi smartphones in India. So they're part of the Make in India sort of movement. And when you're talking about a billion-person market, that's a significant way to step up your game and take market from Samsung, which is a bit slower and a bit more cautious in its marketing strategies in that region. So there's a lot going on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please finish.
So there's a lot going on in South America as well, with Chinese brands taking market share from existing brands such as Samsung there. And with Africa having offshoots of the big Chinese brands making tailor-made devices for their markets, such as Kenya and South Africa. It's a very interesting global dynamic to look at, and it's not surprising to see Samsung start to lose their market share that they had gained from about a decade ago.
That's such a brilliant point to bring up, because I was unaware of some of this like global market share shift. For example, seeing how precarious Samsung's hold in China was, and how recently, and very recently, they had fallen so low behind local brands building more competitive devices. Like when we talk about a company that regularly races between Procter and Gamble for, the #1 advertiser in the world, and they've got $10 billion marketing campaigns, especially here in North America, I think we assume a certain indomitability, which doesn't really reflect real on the ground sales trends when these phones are actually launching.
And launching they will, which is my attempt at a segue.
It was brilliant.
Samsung.
Perfect.
Launching they will tomorrow morning, like actually in hours from the time of this recording. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. Pacific. That's Wednesday morning. So probably by the time you hear this, the announcement will have happened. Unpacked is happening. Ron and I are actually going to be doing live coverage. So if you happen to be hearing this in time for the event, twit.tv/live on Wednesday, August 11th, 7 a.m. Pacific. But if you want the full Monty right now, I can give it to you, at least as far as these phones are concerned. Galaxy Z Fold3, the Z Flip 3, both of these have leaked an insane amount in advance, as this is just usually, this is like the playbook at this point. But now we've got people leaking hands-on. Samsung Malaysia leaked out a promotional video, which we're probably going to see tomorrow at some point, that Samsung's been removing in different places. But if you go on Reddit, you can find it and everything. So we know, that they're going to be doing these foldables, and we knew that in advance, and now we just seem to know everything about it. One of the standout things here is this in-display camera on the Z Fold 2, I believe, is going to have the in-display camera underneath, and it's also going to have S Pen support. Apparently, it's going to have a very specific S Pen support, though. Not the standard S Pen is going to work. You need an actual S Pen designed to work with the Fold 3. So, having said all of this stuff to kind of shoot down Samsung's approach on its flagship phones, is there anything that excites you as like technology fans, let alone just like the average consumer who's probably not going to buy these anyways? What do you guys think?
Juan, you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. It follows through on a conversation that I think is really exciting about technology and engineering. But this is, kind of departing from our previous topic. The waning Galaxy S sales, the absence of the Note. I don't believe these are going to be the products that make up that difference. I don't think they catch us up. Can they properly kick off a more or a broader consumer interest in these types of devices? And I think one of the things that's lacking in our conversation, and especially in our consumer education, is really detailing for consumers how much more you can be doing with these devices. There's a reason why like entry level and mid range is so hot right now, is because really good tech has trickled down to that tier. But at the same time, we still treat $1,000 devices as only being capable of doing the same things that we've always done on phones. We watch reviews where you open some social media, you play a game from 5 years ago, and you like make phone calls. And at the same time, we could have been detailing for these like premium tier consumers what the strengths of these devices really were, how they're now laptop grade competitors in terms of being pocket computers. And I think that's always going to be a slightly disjointed messaging when we look at something that like the Fold is a square tablet that kind of folds into a more phone-like form factor. I feel like this is kind of putting the cart before the horse, because I don't know of many people in my circles of family and friends who would be willing to buy premium tier, but are looking for a squarish tablet. They're not using computers that way. So it's not even a question of, would they spend the money on something like this? They're privileged to be able to buy really nice and expensive gadgets. But the idea of owning a premium top of the line smartphone and a premium top of the line tablet at roughly the same price as a compromised, fragile folding tablet would probably make more sense to that individual. And they're willing to take tablets as more computing grade devices, where even with the amazing software like Dex, they haven't done the same thing for their phones. So I feel like there's going to be a very sort of broad but shallow consumer interest. Cool, this phone folds in half. Hopefully I'll get to see one in person someday. I think that's really nifty. But for my mainstream daily driver communication device that I rely on, I think this is going to be another year of slowly trickling this tech out to the masses, not something that's going to be jumped on with any kind of, exciting adoption rate.
Yeah. What do you think, Matteo?
Yeah. I'm really excited. I mean, we've come from the space 10 years ago where it was exciting to have an OLED screen, and now we've got to the point where we've got folding OLED screens. In 10 years, that's amazing. I'm really excited from a futurist standpoint of where this is going to take us. It's amazing that Samsung has been able to iterate, and we're at the third iteration in around about 18 months, less than 2 years, for foldable devices. It's really exciting. But from a practical standpoint, I don't think this is a mass product that the average consumer will go to. It's really difficult, especially at that price point, to convince someone that that is the product that will solve their problems, that will enable them to get things done, especially when you can have, say, a $400 smartphone paired with a $200 tablet in your backpack, and that solves your problems. If you're wanting to consume media or look at something on a bigger screen, you have that in your pocket or your backpack, and it's at a fraction of the price of buying these shiny new devices. Obviously, enthusiasts will spend their hard-earned cash on these devices. They are really great, I'm sure, but I think that this is, at the moment, still a halo product that is not going to be getting into many consumers' hands.
Yeah, it's kind of a flex in the realm of technology. It's a flex for someone to get it. No pun intended.
What you did there. You referenced one of my favorite LG failures. The LG Flex. That's what we're talking about, right? Bendy OLEDs. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, well, and I truly meant that as like, it is when you're buying some of the foldable technology that's out there right now, including, these phones that, by the way, have not even been officially announced yet. Part of it is probably a desire to be on the latest, greatest technology. Part of it is just like being early on something that may turn into something down the line. But I don't know that I've seen very many times where it's essential to the person's use case. You know what I mean? Like there has rarely been an example, and none even that come to mind, where it's like, I got this because I needed this specific thing. I needed it to fold for this specific reason, and I can't live without that. I'm not saying that reason doesn't exist for someone out there, but that's a very, very small percentage I have to imagine of the people that are buying these things. It's truly a flex. Like, it's just a flex to say like, hey, I've got this future technology. Isn't that neat?
I want to try in being the gadget dude bro that I am, to acknowledge people different than me, where And what I find kind of frustrating is like Samsung made the most noise out of the Flip being the statement phone, as if Samsung was acknowledging like, we know this is less powerful and it's going to be crazy expensive because it's got a hinge on it, but you're making a statement with this. Whereas out of all of these different folding concepts that I've seen, I actually think the Flip has the best potential for addressing kind of what you were talking about there, Jason. People with different needs, different concerns, how women's pants have inadequate pockets. And here's a phone that could fold into a more of a makeup compact size or shape to better make use of that. I mean, how cute would it be to have like those adorably unusable female pants pockets, but then have your phone clipped to that pocket so that it actually fits in there appropriately? Like for as much as I kind of feel like the Fold sort of misses, it's sort of the worst of both worlds. It's a big, chunky, unwieldy, fragile phone, and it's kind of an awkward square tablet. I think the Flip actually has more potential to change some hearts and minds on what this future tech could resemble. And then you also get the bonus of it just genuinely being a less expensive device than the Fold. So you get the kind of whiz-bang cool future feel in a more traditional phone form factor that can do something that might address someone's usability concerns.
Yeah. Well, we won't have to wait very long to find out how people feel about this, because Samsung is going to announce it tomorrow, and I'm sure I know we'll be talking about it next week on the show in more of an official sense. Also probably I'm guessing we're going to hear about the Galaxy Watch 4. I feel like people are kind of on the fence as far as whether that's going to make the news or not, but there was details, I think, that launched today about a new Samsung wearable processor, the Exynos W920. That's probably going to appear in the Galaxy Watch 4, and makes sense that if they were announcing the watch tomorrow, they'd get that news out maybe in advance, because maybe that news isn't that interesting for a big event, but day before it's like they're setting the stage. So we'll see. But we won't have to wait very long. So next week's episode, we'll tell you all about what Samsung has in store. Let's take a break, and then we've got plenty more to talk about. Lots of hardware, some apps, some awesome emails, all that coming up. But for right now, let's take a break and thank the sponsor of this episode of All About Android, and that is Hover. I have domains through Hover. I love Hover. The experience of finding a domain and buying a domain through Hover is just the easiest thing in the world. It's just a great experience, and I've bought domains through sites before where it was a total pain, and then Hover came along and it was like, oh, this can be easy. It can be enjoyable. Excellent. It's time to make plans. Let Hover help you achieve those plans. If you're a blogger, if you're creating a portfolio, you're building an online store, maybe you just want to make a more memorable redirect to your LinkedIn page. I mean, you can do any of these things and a whole lot more. Hover has the best domain names and email addresses just for you. And it's super imaginative. Let your imagination run wild. You can come up with some really cool things. And then when you find it, it's like striking gold. You're like, wait a minute, nobody has that? I'm the one that has that? That's amazing. You might not do anything with it eventually. That's been my case 90% of the time, but hey, I've got it. Anyways, email at your domain name is key to connecting with customers and building trust for your brand. They have domain-based emails for all of your needs, small or large. It's super easy to set up. You can add as many mailboxes to your domain as you need. And then when your domain renews, your mailboxes are going to renew too. The prices, they're unbeatable. They're most popular mailboxes, a no-brainer solution for business owners. You get access from anywhere. You can use the app, the email app you're already comfortable with. If apps aren't your bag, they have webmail that you can access wherever you happen to be. And Hover isn't here to upsell you on the stuff that you don't need. They just want to help. They have pro-level tools, powerful domain and email management tools that are all very intuitive, super easy to use, whether you're a web pro or if you're just getting started. They're private and secure. They have Whois privacy protection that's included with your domain purchase. So your private information is going to remain private. And it's just a great way to, reduce spam. Nobody needs all this spam coming in, so you can reduce that, protect yourself from unwanted solicitations, that kind of stuff. Hover Connect lets you pick the service you want to use and build and host your website. So you connect with Connect, you can start to use your domain name with just a couple of clicks. It's just really easy to connect all of these things together. At Hover, you're a customer, you're not a source of data, so you can take back control of your data with reliable, tracker-free email. Hover is trusted by hundreds of thousands of customers like myself who use their domain names and email to turn their ideas into a reality. So who are you? Are you a developer, a photographer, small business, whoever you happen to be? Hover has something for you, and they're going to expand your projects. They're going to get you the visibility that you want. Go to hover.com/twit, and you can get 10% off your first purchase of any domain extension for the entire first year. That's hover.com/twit. Do that, and you'll get 10% off your domain extension for a full year. And we thank Hover for their continued support of All About Android and the Twit Network. All right, and with that, we kind of were already talking about hardware, but let's make it official, Burke. It's time for some hardware. That's again, one of those There you go. That's one of those hardware bumpers that audio listeners they'll never know. They'll never know that Matteo has imprinted all of our bumpers.
I'm on a goat episode. This is the best.
This is what it's like to live the goat life.
I can't tell you how happy I am.
Let's see here. So we were talking a little bit about foldables, and this is just one of those things that happened earlier today, and I think I tweeted it out, and I said, that's so OnePlus of them to do this. OnePlus tweeted out an image or a video. I can't remember if I did see a video, but I can't remember what the tweet was exactly. There it is, of a dual screen device that they say is taking place, you guessed it, tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Pacific, which is the same exact time as Samsung's announcement. I feel like this is just one of those things that's like, it's an unspoken rule. Like, bro, did you just do that? Because like I've got an announcement of a foldable device tomorrow. In fact, I happen to be like the biggest player in foldable devices in the market right now. And you, little scrappy upstart, although they're not much of an upstart anymore, come in and you tweet out that you're going to release a foldable at the same time that I'm doing it, bro. That's what it felt like to me. What do you guys think? Juan, I have a feeling you have thoughts on this. Let's start.
Okay, with I'll go first again. I was going to let Matteo go first. This is, I think you nailed it. This is such a OnePlus thing to do. They're still playing this game as if they are the plucky upstart, even though we know that the business relationship has changed with that kind of umbrella corporation idea. I just in terms of practicality, I personally have preferred dual display devices to folding screens. I find just the glass experience is nicer. I like stylus support, Surface Duo, LG V60, Velvet, etc. I'm curious, like what OnePlus might be playing with here for some kind of folding or dual display or some kind of extra functionality kind of gadget. But it's not just the second screen. And it's one of those things that I think OnePlus will be heavily scrutinized for is what software have you brought? What additional functionality or productivity have you brought? The V60 was fun, not just because you had two screens side by side, but you had stylus support, you had shortcuts, you had pen interactions, you had all of this extra stuff that really made dual display feel like a multitasking a productivity environment. So again, I've enjoyed my time on the OnePlus 9 Pro. I staple another screen onto the side of that. I think that could make for a fun device. But just the timing, the announcement, everything about this completely reeks of what you were talking about. Just like, us? We didn't know. Samsung, you had something too? I guess we're wearing the same dress. It's kind of silly.
I hadn't noticed. I hadn't noticed you over there, Samsung. I'm sorry. I just kind of don't care about you that much, so I do my own thing.
Well, it's like that line from Mad Men. You're like, I don't think about you at all.
Yeah,
but you know that they do. So,
they totally do. I mean, there is obvious awareness there that they do. They're doing it literally on the day before. So, day before the event. What do you think, Matteo? Do you think this is? Do you think? Well, okay. So I guess my question for you, Matteo, is we've seen and we've talked many times on this show about how OnePlus has made many decisions in the past, marketing decisions that have not gone so well for them. And I don't know how this could really affect them on a deep level, but do you think this is another example of that? What do you think about the tease?
Well, the tease is very dodgy in of itself, as in we can see that it's two separate screens, but it might just be their marketing department having a bit of fun. I'm going to take this conspiracy theory a bit further. I share the opinion with Alex Doby of Android Central, who said this is probably just a bit of an elaborate troll from OnePlus on the day before Samsung's big announcement of foldables. I'm going to take things. Right. I'm going to take things a step further and say that this is a really big announcement that's coming from OnePlus tomorrow. They're going to announce that they have partnered with Royole, the plucky little upstart that made some terrible foldable devices from late 2018 onwards, and were essentially using the slipstream of all Samsung's marketing to get their devices to market. And I would like to think of it, just because of how it's named and the fact that there's a picture of the Milky Way in this allegedly foldable device from OnePlus, that this is the OnePlus Royole with cheese.
Very nice.
I love it.
But what was there was a partnership. Actually, I don't think it was an official partnership. God, who was it that took the Royole and then resold it themselves?
Oh, you mean Pablo Escobar phone?
The Escobar phone. Yes.
Yes. So this is the same plucky little upstart, and I wouldn't be surprised to see OnePlus working with them.
Oh my goodness. That would be, I don't know how I'd feel about that. That's just turning this up on, upside down. I do actually, now that I think about it, now that I hear you talking through, like, yes, that's a crazy conspiracy theory, I think. However, I think you might be right. I think I'm willing to put my money on the fact that this is now, I'm thinking that this is a total joke. And I don't know that I considered that before. I like, that thought never crossed my mind. I was like, well, look at what OnePlus is doing. But no, I think you might be right. I think they're probably going to like reveal it as like a joke, like, because it kind of does look like two OnePlus phones just like sandwiched on top of each other. Maybe they end up pulling out and turning on the lights, and that's literally what it is. And they're like, haha, enjoy your event,
Yep. Well, they're probably trying to make the point that whatever OnePlus phone is in the shadows there is probably two OnePlus Nord 2s side by side, and that you can have a lot more value from those devices than you would have from some more expensive ones.
You just wrote the most beautiful marketing campaign for a mid-ranger phone. Is for 1/4 the price of this folding thing, you could outfit your whole family and have fun.
Yes, and that is the sort of thing that will resonate with a lot of people, saying, "Ooh, I could have one folding phone for one person, or the whole family gets a OnePlus Nord 2."
Yeah, or it could be OnePlus doing the LG thing and releasing a case, some sort of a case that has a screen on it.
That could be kind of cool.
Maybe.
I'm willing to split the difference, though, that maybe this could also be what was the really, I can't remember, what was the concept phone that OnePlus came out with that had like the glass on the back camera could go dark, like neutral density filter style, and it had that like leather back.
Concept One. Concept One.
The concept. I mean, to me, like, we could probably say like, hey, we've got a concept for a dual screen device or a folding device, but it's not, it's not a real thing that we're going to be selling, just like Concept One was. But they're using that under the marketing hype for Samsung's foldables at the same time. Like, I think we could also kind of split the difference on, hype beast trolling and actual legit marketing all at the same time.
Yeah, and it also occurs to me that it's actually, whether this is a real device or not, or whatever this ends up being, OnePlus's goal of doing this, piggybacking on the Samsung announcement, is that anybody who's writing about this, there's a higher likelihood of them also mentioning, on the same day that OnePlus announced its, and whatever thing, and linking to it. So it's a really, actually, in some ways, kind of stupidly smart way of piggybacking on the promotional energy that's already going to be there for Samsung. We know that's going to be there for Samsung. So if OnePlus has anything of note, they kind of have the potential of being in there too, in the same articles. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I don't know.
Look, their dastardly plan worked. We are have been talking about them for 5 minutes.
I fall for it every time. I fall for it every dang time.
Although, I mean, I will be honest. I would be very concerned about like a launch, like a first generation launch OnePlus dual display. But for how much I've really liked dual displays, there's something I'm critically curious. I kind of hope that they've got something to back this up. I mean, if it's just like a brilliant marketing ploy to troll Samsung, great. I mean, that's kind of in the DNA of OnePlus. Totally. But seeing some of their recent turns on the tiers of devices from Nord to their kind of flagship OnePlus, I would be kind of curious to see like what could they bring to the table? What might make that a little bit different? But the more we talk about it, now you guys have kind of convinced me. Like I'm much more. I'm feeling much more like this is probably some kind of elaborate troll.
Yeah. Feeling a little more skeptical about it myself. Yep.
For real. Yeah.
Well, let's see here. Xiaomi, in the realm of devices we know actually exist, Xiaomi unveiled a pretty decent haul of hardware announcements. The Mi Mix 4, which happens to be the first Mi Mix in 3 years. And yes, I mean, the trend du jour is the in-display camera. We're expecting to see one on the Z Fold, and the Mi Mix is right there too. The Mi Mix 4 has an in-display camera that they call the Cup, also known as the camera under panel. So that's how they're labeling that, I suppose. Xiaomi says that the area. So when it comes to cameras under the display, my understanding is in order for the camera to shine through the pixels, A, the pixels have to be deadened, they have to be turned off. And B, usually what they've done is that's like a lower pixel density there so that there isn't as much stuff getting in the way potentially of the camera. So, you can get a better quality picture. Xiaomi says they're putting a 400 pixels per inch area in front of that camera, which they say it makes it virtually invisible. Of course, they say that. So that remains to be seen. But I haven't seen any of these in-display camera devices in person yet to really know for myself kind of what it results in. Or if I have, I can't recall. Whoa, got some dogs going nuts right now. Have either of you, and what has been your experience as far as that's concerned? Matteo, maybe you go first.
Yeah, I got to play with some in-screen or under-screen cameras at, I believe it was MWC 2019, and then later at IFA that year. They weren't finished products, but they were being demoed within the industry, and I wasn't too excited by them. They're not great from what I saw, and from having seen other people go hands-on with a few devices by Oppo and Vivo and others, whilst it is viable, it's not a great output compared to a dedicated dotch or notch in a camera and having a clear selfie camera. It depends on what the use case is and how important image quality or video quality is to the people using that phone. Because for some people, they may decide that, and if it's not great, they won't go for it. But then again, for things like TikTok and any social media use where you are using a selfie camera, maybe that quality in the content is not as high of a priority. So we'll see how this goes. What I think the next step will be is if there is any sort of effect that comes from the under-screen camera, how long will it take some of the social media apps and services to have a filter to make it look like you have the cool phone with an under-screen camera. We'll just have to wait and see how long that takes, because for some people, this Xiaomi Mi Mix, especially in Asia, will definitely be a status symbol. To have a Xiaomi Mi Mix device is there. So if you can have an under-screen camera filter to make it look as if your content has been filmed on that, will actually be boosting your status within the social network. So lots of dynamics going on here, but apart from that, the Mi Mix 4 is a true flagship. This is the sort of aspirational device that Xiaomi goes all out on to see how things go and which bits will then trickle down to their more affordable devices in their product portfolio.
The affordable range pricing, converted to US dollars anyways, on the entry level is $970 for the top of the line ish, somewhere around there. So pretty affordable for premium range.
Yeah, Xiaomi's been hitting real hard on that price performance. Yeah. My experience with this kind of tech is even older. The last time I kind of saw some of these demos, it was like an LG display tour where they were looking at these kind of transparent OLEDs. And the conversation surrounding them the engineering challenge is really profound. I mean, think about how much work we go through on cameras to maximize the acquisition of light. And here we're putting display information in front of this camera. And I'm kind of torn on it. Like to your point, Matteo, I wonder, so many people rely on that selfie camera for so much of their documenting activities, family memories. I mean, we can kind of write off, those TikTok kids, but those TikTok kids are doing phenomenally intricate camera work and editing work, and they're doing it on a silly little social media app. But some of the stuff that gets produced on these short form video sharing sites is remarkably proficient. This is kind of like where people learn how to use their cameras and become the next generation of filmmakers and storytellers. So I guess, I mean, for me and Jason, I'd kind of like to throw this question back to you too, is do we really think consumers are that bothered by notches and widow's peaks and punch holes? And does the notion of an uninterrupted screen, which I value as a nerd, and I like to consume content, and I hate when my game is cut into by a notch or a hole punch, are there more people like that who value the media consumption experience, or are there more people who are going to be bothered or worried about having the better selfie camera and who would just live with the screen interruption?
I mean, I think especially where we're at right now with notches not being full bars. I mean, at least on the iPhone, I guess it's still like a full bar, but on the majority of Android phones. Yeah, on the majority, yes, right. On the majority of Android phones, if there is a notch, it's usually, either a cutout or a tiny little teardrop or whatever. It's pretty minimally invasive. And I would guess that the majority of everyday people probably couldn't care less as far as that's concerned. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of part of the phone and it does the thing they want it to do. I don't know that I've really encountered many, like people in my family that are complaining to me, I love this phone, but it's that notch that's really ugly to me. I doubt most people really care. You know what I mean? But at the same time, if the technology gets to a point to where that notch goes away, I don't think people would be upset about that, but the trade-off can't be there. It can't be, well, we took the notch away, but your selfies that you take, the majority of your photos or selfies, actually don't look as good as you're used to them looking. People aren't going to be okay with that either. So, but there's only one way to get there, and that's to iterate, and that's what we're seeing.
Oh, here. For sure. But I think generationally, I think that is something that people would notice more aggressively than we techies might think. Someone's going 2 years on a smartphone, 3 years on a smartphone purchase, and they're kind of holding out in that kind of longer time frame. I think there would be an expectation that like, oh, I'm going to buy this new phone and supposedly the cameras are better. Why do my selfies look darker or smudgy or smearier? Yes. To me, that would read immediately as an issue.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. Can I have a moment and a bit of a sad trombone to remember the selfie cameras that used to pop up out of smartphones up to 2 years ago?
Yeah.
That whole generation of hardware innovation has disappeared. Sadly, that was the solution to that problem.
What was the solution to that problem?
Well,
I see what you mean.
You didn't have a notch, you didn't need an under-display camera, and you got often some better selfie cameras than you would have in a dedicated hardware section that popped out of the phone.
I
have to Oppo's Reno 2 series.
I had so many great video shooting and video calling experiences on the LG Wing. That just last year was a great pop out selfie camera. It still kind of held to some older tech designs and keeping the whole front screen totally uninterrupted.
I have to imagine phone makers are super happy and not looking at all with fondness on the pop-up camera. Just from a mechanical standpoint, I have to imagine it was far more expensive for them to build the mechanical, pop-out camera than it is for them to do some of the other things, and that's probably part of the reason why they continue to explore.
Before we leave this article, can I just call out something here that The Verge has written? Because we're talking about the Mix 4, and I mean, I think this is going to be a reasonably priced phone. But this one paragraph, the camera system centers around a 108 megapixel Samsung HMX sensor, suggesting similar or identical performance to the slightly outdated but still pretty good Mi 11. The Mi 11 is a current generation phone, and there aren't a whole lot of 108 megapixel pixel binning sensors out on the market. I'm wondering how that's already outdated.
Life moves really fast. If you're, what is the what is the Ferris Bueller?
I just watched that movie and now I can't remember the quote.
What is it? Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
I just would like to put out that the $1,000 iPhone 12 has a smaller, it's a 1/2.55 inch 12 megapixel sensor, and we would never hear about that camera sensor being outdated. Where Mi 11 is at the bleeding edge of HDR pixel binning technology. It is competing directly against the bleeding edge of Samsung Ultra phones. But the Mi 11, I think that camera is a little outdated now because it's months old. What are we doing?
When was it even announced?
Talk about average consumers using $900 phones. This is silly. That's silly.
Look,
and I have to say that sensor is a fantastic sensor. I have it in the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro 5G, which is a late 2020 phone. That 108 megapixel sensor is very, very good and will be for years. Xiaomi have been updating their software with the latest versions of MIUI, and I really disagree with that statement. The other thing is they're also not mentioning that it's the Mi 11 Ultra that they should be talking about, not the standard Mi 11 in that context.
Ah, interesting. Look, this phone was announced 5 months ago. Okay, it's DED dead.
It's old news.
But that really is a testament to kind of like where we are in kind of technology coverage circles, but also in like technology enthusiast circles and Android circles. We're so accustomed in the world of Android to hearing about the latest and greatest, and that's always like within a realm of like a couple of months. Like like all of the energy right now will be around Samsung's foldables. That's happening tomorrow, and there's going to be a lot of energy around this. But that energy is going to be completely gone in like a month or 2 months or whatever when the Pixels happen, and then the energy will be there. It's like we're addicted to this constant, ongoing, every other month, some big major announcement that now that's the marquee thing to pay attention to. Look over there. This one, that's old. That's stinky.
I just, and to Matteo's point too, it's I just take that little bit of a bristle because camera technology doesn't cycle like that. It really doesn't. Our improvements to camera performance and optics and sensor design, and when we see these advancements, we kind of just shrug. And then you don't ever really get to the meat and potatoes of why that made the camera better. But then we'll get these like ridiculous camera showdowns like, oh, well, see, what you need is this phone with this kind of HDR and the megapixels. And you're like, you completely missed the point. This is not what's making your photos better.
I think that's a point that Google has been making for years. The
right.
Pixel cameras have not changed it from a hardware perspective significantly for about 3 years, yet the camera performance on the devices has been improving.
Yeah,
for sure.
Interesting stuff. Finally, in this hardware block, we did already talk about me, Flo, Ron, and our guest Russell Hawley last week talked about the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro. We had that news in time for the show, thankfully, so we were able to kind of walk through, how we felt about the hardware. So I've shared my thoughts. I'm curious to know how you both feel about and you can talk about Google's strategy. Like they have it up on the store already. They're like, yeah, Pixel 6, it's a thing. Come park on the store and take a look at our promotional images, months in advance of its actual release. Or you could talk about the phone itself and why you like it or don't. But Juan, starting with you, what are your thoughts on the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro?
Anyone who's familiar with my content knows that I'm kind of an obnoxious zealot for competition. And this was not a good year for competition in North America. Losing one of my all-time favorite smartphone manufacturers in LG, seeing kind of Motorola on the decline and not stepping up to this kind of premium tier. And for everything that we were saying about mid-rangers being these great consumer buys, if we actually do our jobs in talking about what bleeding edge premium or halo products, to steal Matteo's phrase, can bring to the table, there's still something critically exciting about this $1,000 tier of devices, somewhere in the 800s to 1200s. I just recently did a road trip where I shot, edited, rendered 4K 60 frame per second video all from my phone. I didn't take my camera. I didn't take my laptop. I got all of my work done. I was hosting live streams. Like this was freeing, and it was really liberating to be able to accomplish that high a tier of content production on the go. So short story, incredibly long. I am critically excited for Google coming back. Last year was an off year. Pixel 5 was really a premium mid-ranger. I thought it was priced appropriately. It has genuinely been one of the most improved phones of last year as Google software continues to iterate. It's gotten more powerful. The battery life has gotten better on my unit. Pixel 5 has been a joy to use, but now I want to see what Google can really do at the fringe, at the premium tier, pricing the product appropriately for that upper echelon of enthusiasts, that 10% of potential Pixel buyers who might consider an expensive phone. And I think it's all going to hinge on their own SoC. For competition, it's not just the phone; it's also seeing them compete in this CPU space, in this GPU space. And Google is already kind of ahead of the curve on a lot of this machine learning hardware. Like we saw with the Pixel 4, that thing was an absolute monster at chewing up image data. I mean, it can still compete handily with Snapdragon 888s for things like video rendering. It's just absolutely insane. So seeing that come to this tier of processor, this current age, and seeing competition for premium smartphones, competition for SoCs, I don't expect it to sell well. I don't expect it to just suddenly just be in the Samsung competition conversation, but I want to see what Google's idea of expensive and premium tier actually resembles.
Yeah. And, we didn't hear about any foldable. There's been rumors about a foldable. So, someone in chat, out of sync in chat, was like, wow, I guess there's not going to be a Google phone announcement this year. Pretty sure there's still going to be a hardware event. And I think Google has other hardware up its sleeve. There's still a Google Watch or a Pixel Watch that we're waiting on. So this isn't Google announcing everything, but this is Google doing what they've proven they can do well in the past, which is, there's leaks and this information is going to get out anyways because we're really bad at keeping secrets. So let's just get ahead of it and put it out there for everyone to see and everyone to get excited about and cannibalize our Pixel 5 sales of the process. Although maybe they just target different ends of the market and they don't cannibalize. Well, but anyways,
don't you think that's interesting though? Like we just took a look at sales numbers where Galaxy S is making up, depending on what analyst you follow, under 10% of Samsung sales over the last 6 months. We should have an expectation that a premium priced Pixel should roughly fall into that same kind of sales market penetration. And we know that, it's the A series Pixels that are really kind of growing the Pixel mindshare. That shouldn't be a surprise, but we always kind of act like, this phone didn't suddenly sell in the top 5 of all devices of all time. It's got to be a failure. And that's not ever been true for any manufacturer. We've always seen that breakdown on mainstream consumers going for mainstream products. Average consumers buy average phones. And so if we want to talk about an enthusiast tier, premium tier, or professional grade tool, that is a niche conversation automatically. That is a tiny demographic of potential consumers already. And I feel like we need to give Pixel 6 that kind of consideration. I'm already a little worried that some of the hype that's building up for Pixel 6 is really just so that then a lot of reviewers can kind of tear it back down again. And I'm already ready. The Geekbench scores were 5% slower. Why would you spend $1,000 on the Geekbench scores? And they're not actually going to do anything real world. Like they're not going to try editing a video or editing a photo or a high performance laptop grade kind of use out of a laptop priced smartphone. I'm trying to kind of hedge my reactions to the rest of the reactions from the tech industry.
Yeah. Well, Matteo, so what was your reaction to what you learned about the Pixel 6? And mind you, we did have a decent amount of leaks leading up to this, so it's not like a lot of this was totally a surprise. But what were your thoughts? What's your take?
I was glad to see that with the previous leaks about the design are there. I'm quite enjoying the look of this new Pixel design language. And as a consumer, I'm really very excited about improved hardware in the cameras, the whole dedicated Tensor chipset or the Google chipset with a dedicated ISP or two. We don't know much details about it, but I'm from a sort of mobile photography standpoint, I'm very, very excited. And this is something that, as someone deeply embedded in the Google ecosystem, I will take a serious decision on getting the Pro device and living the life in the Pixel world. Now, for the average consumer, this, as Juan correctly said, this is going to be a niche product. But then again, with the recent removal of the unlimited free storage on Google Photos, and the number of people who use Google Photos and have been doing so even after the drop of that free functionality, I think that there will be a certain number of people who may switch from, say, iPhones or Samsung devices or any other high-end smartphone to the Pixel just to be able to continue using Google Photos. It's a bit like a drug dealer giving people their first free hit with Google Photos. I think Google has done that for a few years, and they're now going to start reeling in the consumers to their own hardware by offering the continuation of the free service in the Pixel line. And I'm quite happy to do that. I believe the Google Photos product is great, and if I get any benefits from Google Photos from having a Pixel device, that makes me a more invested consumer.
Yeah, indeed. Do you, just real quick before we move on, do you think the foldable is an actual, like, do you think we're actually going to see some sort of Pixel foldable? There have been rumors in that regard.
I don't think Pixel is a brand that Google will be ready to have with foldables. The Pixel line is for actual everyday users. They want to pitch it more of a lifestyle product. alongside or competing against the iPhone, I don't think foldable is a Pixel product portfolio area they want to be involved in, especially at this early stage of the hardware technology and the reliability of the screens.
Yeah. So I agree with Matteo, but I'm actually worried that Google might push into foldables sooner than they should. That they'll try and come up with the Android flavor, the stock Android flavor of what a foldable should be, and I worry that they'll kind of poison their own well on that by trying to get ahead of it. We know that they've been working with Microsoft on Android UI tweaks for folding and dual display devices. We know that there was a lot of back and forth between Google and Samsung on this kind of technology. Like, we've seen those reports on Google looking at Samsung's folding screen tech. And I agree with Matteo. I kind of hope that they don't enter this until a bit more traction has been earned for consumers considering this kind of screen tech. But I also feel like they'll say, hey, for us to really be able to make Android the adaptable operating system to all of these new form factors, we really need to lead the way on this kind of stuff so that it's not Samsung's skin which defines a foldable Android phone. And I don't think they'll be ready to show that off when they make that jump.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
God.
So at that point, we can just agree that early 2022, the Google Royole with cheese.
There we go. Okay. So Google's going to do it. The Pixel Royale with cheese.
Pixel Royale. It's hilarious. I don't even think that brand has any idea just how fitting with cheese is to the end of their company name.
Totally. So true. All right. Let's see here. We do have more coming up. We've got some app news. Let's do it. All right, just a couple of things and to talk about here real quick. And one of these, I probably wouldn't have put it into the rundown if I didn't see a whole bunch of people like pitching in on this on Twitter in particular. But I mean, at this point, I have moved on from Hangouts. I don't think I'm logged. Like, it's not on my phone anymore. My Gmail now has Google Chat integrated, and I've been using Chat. Like, pretty much the only person I messaged via Hangouts with was my wife. Her and I, that was just kind of our ongoing communication method up until probably a couple of months ago, and then I finally installed Chat on her device, and more importantly, removed Hangouts. And I was like, this is the one you use now. Put the icon in the right place, and now that's how we communicate for the most part. But apparently, Google has not completely shuttered Hangouts, although this is the year that it's going to happen. But it just seems like they're taking their time, and I don't know if that's a good or a bad idea. But at this point, I kind of care less because I'm not with Hangouts anymore. But I'm curious to know if you two are. They are now putting up these messages that say, if you're trying to launch Hangouts or whatever, it's like, it's time to switch. It's time to switch to Chat. And I don't know. Do you like Chat? Have you used Chat? What do you think compared to Hangouts? Matteo, you go first.
Yeah, I have to say, I have been transitioned to Chats for quite a while now, both in my personal chats and within work. So I work with not only the company I work for, but other companies where the Google Workspaces or the Google Workplace chat is an integral part of internal communication. So I'm quite happy with the service. It seems and feels cleaner to me personally, and I'm quite happy it's there. Though it just is a highlight of the fragmentation of Google's messaging service that we have a separate RCS app for SMS and chat and any other service on our phone from other parties that leaves messaging as a very fragmented experience. I have a folder on my phone with, I think, 12 different chat apps, and that's what I have to do because I have friends in different countries, different environments. They use different messaging services. I have to have this whole folder to keep up with things. The good news is that Google's chat service is usable on multiple devices, so you don't have to be tied to the one device as you are with other ones, usually tied to your phone number. But I have to say, for most of my sort of tech stuff, I've transitioned to Telegram. So I still use Google Chats for work or where people are. But just as Jason has a folder there, I have 12 different chat services. Telegram is the main one I use, mainly because, again, I can use it on multiple devices. It's not like WhatsApp, which has to be on the one with your phone number.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Didn't they change that recently, or they were going to change that? I don't know if WhatsApp.
Yes, there's ways around it, but it's still a horrible experience compared to, say, Telegram, where they allow you to do it quite easily.
Quite easily, yeah. What do you think, Matteo? Have you gotten used to chat? And by the way, not to be confused with RCS chat, because Google weird. Or sorry, Juan, not Matteo. But not to be confused with RCS chat, which is also very confusing because these things have the same name practically. But Juan, what do you think?
Well, and there have just been so many different permutations of Hangouts. So when I saw this story, I was kind of surprised because I was a long-term holdout for Hangouts for SMS integration. It was just genuinely the app that I preferred. You know, this is a couple years back. I preferred for managing text messages. And so I really did use Hangouts mostly for texting. I didn't get deep into Hangouts for the more sort of chatty features on this. So when RCS started rolling out and I had more chat features in Google Messages, and especially now that most of my family has kind of rolled into this chat style integration for their text messaging app, I haven't needed to. I haven't fired up Google Chat. It's not been something that I've needed to try. So I genuinely don't know anything about it. I don't have anyone that's having conversations with me there. We're so chat fragmented now. Like, I know certain people that I'm only going to be able to talk to in private messages on Twitter. Telegram has been a good sort of gap, a stopgap in my chat hole messaging strategy. Discord is taking up a lot more of my sort of creating communities and building these servers, and that's been fun and exciting. But because of the recent, sort of surge in adoption for RCS, this kind of idea of a standalone chat app just doesn't seem to be as precious. It just doesn't seem to be as critical. Especially like when we were back in the day talking about Allo and just oh, here's another app, and this is I'm going to try and get my mom on this, and we're going to chat, and then they're going to take it away, and then they did, and you're like, I'm so glad I didn't get my mom on Allo. This hasn't been an issue. Like I'm glad, it's cool. I guess you need it. But between all of the like Slack, Discord, Zoom, Teams, Duo, chat, texting, Telegram, cool. All right. Fine. I guess. Sure.
Never ending. It never ends. The messaging discussion never ends. It will always be this. What's up, Matteo?
Plus, I was just saying, in terms of messaging, if you live in Asia and specifically in China, you just don't have that fragmentation of messaging. Everyone is using WeChat for everything. And at that point, you become device and platform agnostic. As long as WeChat works on your device, you're happy. We haven't reached that sort of moment of let's say, enlightenment yet.
Zen. Moment of Zen comes to mind. I'm pretty used to it. I embedded it or integrated it with Gmail, so that's one more angle for it. So it doesn't bother me. I don't know, the people who are using it that don't like it as much. I mean, I can understand it. It definitely did seem like it was one of those cases where Google transitioned away from something to something, and that to something wasn't quite fully fleshed out when they did it. Google just does this time and time again, and eventually over time they build things up and they get better. So I feel like chat is kind of at a good state right now.
Well,
So
I'm glad to
anywho,
hear that. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say I'm glad to hear that. But again, I feel like Hangouts fulfilled this kind of conversation thread idea.
Yeah, it did.
That now, like, we've got other solutions, and to kind of Matteo's point too, it's like I'm glad we've got some competition in that space. I don't want one company to just win. But it is kind of interesting that I think for a majority of my family's interactions, RCS has been huge. This has just been so much fun to get these kinds of chat style integrations stapled to our text messages. And like, that's just kind of taken the win. And I don't have to worry about, the family member that's on some outdated, Hangouts or other kind of chatting service. It just seems like moving forward, that's going to be way more accessible to people now.
Okay. So I'm going to piggyback off of that. Because I've got a question related to this. So my wife has the Pixel 4a, and she's loved it up until the past, I would say, month and a half or so, where suddenly her Android messages, it's not auto updating. It's like she goes in there, she's like, God, I'm waiting for this message from a client that's never coming through. When she opens it is when it refreshes, and then suddenly things appear. Or she'll get one of those little MMS with the little pause button or whatever in order to, or you know what I mean? You have to tap it in order to load it. And her settings are set up properly. Like I've poured over this thing, and we're trying to figure out, does this have something to do with RCS? Like, is RCS getting in the way? Blah, blah. She's kind of hit a point now where, we're going to wipe her phone and start fresh, and that sucks. But before we do that, she's like, I need all of my messages. So a lot of her messages now, because RCS is so much more prevalent, are RCS, and I'm not certain that Google's backup tool backs up RCS. It backs up SMS and MMS, but I don't think it touches RCS because of the encryption. And other tools don't do that either. Have you guys experienced that? Like when I was thinking about it just last night, and I was talking to her about it, I was like, this could be a really big problem for people, because we expect more and more we rely on, or a lot of people rely on having their entire message thread, their entire message history. And when they move to a different device, we're kind of used to that history kind of coming over. And so we have all of our messages and we don't lose anything in the process. But if RCS messages don't come over, meanwhile, all of the American carriers are going all in on RCS, which means more people are going to be using RCS, and more of those messages are going to be locked in that kind of like encrypted silo. That could pose a problem for people when it comes to data portability. What do you think about that?
No, that definitely sounds like a sticky one. And I went through something somewhat similar. I was on Google Fi and was using, because Google Fi has its own flavor of messages for web, where it's a lot more like Google Voice. And so I don't know what happened, and I don't know what solved it. But I was moving back and forth between review devices and really popping my SIM card out in between a bunch of different phones, which I'm sure your wife was not doing. But I did get to a point where, like, I was in a group chat, a group text thread, and nothing would come in. And it would alert. I would get all the notifications that messages were coming in, but it would be all of these MMS failed to downloads. And I don't know what ultimately fixed it. But from the RCS side of this, having switched carriers and reactivating the chat features on a new phone, on a new carrier, it still seemed like everything kind of came back through. The messages for web, messages on my device, all of those fields kind of repopulated that data. So I'm not entirely sure, because to your point is very present right now in the conversations we're having about data privacy and data security. I don't know where exactly those messages get nuked, because you would think like RCS backed up from Google Fi, switching to another carrier, setting up a new phone. So far, everything has still maintained the thread of my conversations. I haven't lost.
You're not losing
any
anything.
Conversations yet.
Okay.
Knock on wood. But it is definitely a challenge when you can't figure out where in the data pipeline are my internets getting clogged.
Yeah. And I think in framing my question, I realize it's two separate things. It's why is my wife's phone doing that? And someone in chat actually pointed out I should check battery usage. I hadn't thought about doing that to see if background battery usage, if there's something putting it to sleep. So I'm going to check that. Not that she would change that. So I don't know why that would be changed if that's the case. But I realize that's one part of my question. The other part of my question is really just uncertainty about the portability of RCS chats, because I specifically recall even in the latest changes that Google announced to its backup system, they specifically call out SMS and MMS as being data points in messaging that are backed up, but RCS is nowhere to be found. And I feel like I've read Google say, yeah, we can't back up RCS messages. But are they backing up for some people? And if so, like, I want to read something that tells me that for sure, so that I don't wipe her phone and then find out half her messages are gone.
Yeah. So as far as I'm aware, yes, RCS messages are backed up as part of your Android backup. And obviously there are some limitations. If you're bouncing around beta or developer preview releases, you can't back up from a newer version of Android to an older one. But as far as I'm aware, you can do it between devices as long as you're going from the same version of Android to the same one or newer. And you just do your standard Android backup and then restore on the new device or your reset device to get those. Now, I had the same issue with messages a while back, but I think my issue was I had Do Not Disturb on, and it was the Messages app wasn't one that could give me notifications. And in Do Not Disturb mode, you also have probably some battery savings. So that chat message about battery savings and permissions, and probably permissions for notifications might be one to check as well. But without having a bit more detail, it's difficult to find the details there. But I'd say, a good place to check is battery settings, notification permissions. It may have downgraded messages for some reason. And also double check use of Do Not Disturb, which is a very powerful setting and can potentially change things.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to my guests for troubleshooting my wife's phone with me.
Oh, sorry. Key application support engineer question here. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Multiple times. Yes. Yeah.
Have you tried? Have you tried clearing the cache on the messaging app? I think that does nothing.
I know. That's one of those things that I used to do all the time. Not because I really understood why. I just read it in XDA form somewhere. I was like, oh.
Although
in developer options, in developer options, did you increase the animation speeds to 0.5x?
No, I did. Just in serious note, one of the things I was just kind of noodling through some of the, our RCS messages backed up. Apparently, there can be issues if she ever changes her messaging app. So that would be a concern, especially as you were saying with RCS and encryption. If you go from if the phone still has a carrier messaging app on it and you try to switch that out, that seems to be a situation that might cause more disruption in retaining the messages server side.
Okay. And we're getting some folks in chat who are pointing, it looks like Scooter X is doing some work, pointing to let's see here. So the SMS Backup and Restore app, if you've ever heard of that, we mentioned that on the show many times. They actually have an FAQ where they say specifically, this app requires existing backups to be able to restore call logs and messages. It cannot require anything without existing backups. Advanced messaging RCS is currently only supported with Google Messages. So I don't know if that means backing up advanced messages like RCS is only supported in Google Messages. Google itself, let's see here. This is what I want. I want a Google page that's like Google saying, yes, Android Messages backs up RCS. There is a community post from 2019. So that seems earlier than all the RCS stuff. So I don't know if that relates. that is about Google Messages preserving RCS backup messages and backup. I'm not see that, and this is the problem. Like some people, I feel like I found online say yes, it did restore them. It sounds like that's what you were saying, Juan. And then other people say it doesn't, and I want to be certain. So it's like I'm not doing anything until I know certainly what I can do to make sure that she doesn't lose any messages in the process. I don't know what to do. Whatever. I'll continue looking. And if I figure out an answer, thanks to your help especially, I will let everybody know. Thank you for my advanced customer support call. Okay. Up next, we have a few of your awesome emails. AAA at twit.tv, 347-SHOW-AAA if you prefer to call, which most people do not. Wes is the first email. Wes wrote in to say, I'm setting up a bunch of small displays throughout my house without breaking the bank. I'm wondering if you have any feedback on whether the various on tablets would serve this purpose. My partner has to be on a fairly regimented schedule for every day for health reasons. We're finding it hard to hold the schedule the moment we leave the room with the schedule printed out. So so what I'd like to do is put a display in multiple rooms, 3 or 4 max, showing current and upcoming calendar entries to keep us on schedule no matter what room we find ourselves in. Each display would be hooked up to a power outlet. That's a good thing. So I wouldn't need to take them down and charge every day. I'd like for our screens to be always displaying the calendar information, at least during daytime hours. So I'm concerned about screen burn-in. And yeah, I feel like we talk less and less about screen burn-in these days, but I don't know about the on tablets. Wes says, I know I can use the always on when plugged in setting in developer options to disable the screen timeout, and could probably hook something up to an app like Tasker to turn the screens off overnight and back on in the morning. Do the on tablets have something like Galaxy Pixel's always on display feature to show a calendar's widget information when the screen is off? No, it does not. It does not have an ambient screen mode. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think on this. Just if you have any random ideas. My thought was something with Tasker, like setting it up so that almost less that it's on a timed schedule, but more that if you can set it up so that the front-facing camera detects motion. Because you're going to have them plugged in, so who cares? Have the front-facing camera detect motion, and when it detects motion, the screen goes on, and you see the information. And then after a set amount of time, have the screen go off. I don't know. That was an idea that I had. But you guys have any thoughts on this? I realize this is throwing something at you suddenly.
No, I think their strategy. I was even just trying to do the math in my head because I'm a big fan of like portable displays and like, you can get a really nice, portable monitor, but you can't get a really nice portable monitor for less than the price of an on tablet. So this strategy seems like it might be one of the more cost effectives. I think you're just going to have to accept for that price. You're going to have to do the extra legwork on setting up some kind of Tasker style solution like Jason was talking about. I would expect if you're displaying the same information on a cheap tablet screen all day, it's going to burn in. And you're just going to have to kind of eat the costs of occasionally swapping those tablets out if it bothers you. Because if it's also genuinely like the same kind of format on the display, it might not bother you that it's burned in. Like it might be fine. But I can't really crunch the numbers in my head and with a quick Google on anything that will be cheaper, more accessible, and more immediate than I think that is a strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing an 8-inch tablet. It's kind of exhausting to continue doing the thing, so I'm going to stop. The on tablet for $76 a piece, for an 8-inch tablet. 4 of those, was that almost $300 ish.
Mm-hmm. As opposed to trying to outfit with smart displays that are going to be harder to mount and more expensive and might not be as customizable for putting up the information that you want. Yeah, totally.
There's certainly a way. I can't think of anything better than kind of what you're considering. I really do think that, I was trying to do a search for an app that is all about motion control, and if motion, then do this thing. And anything that's in the App Store that I could find, the Play Store that's about motion control, is all security based. It's like detect motion with the camera and then turn on the camera to record what's there. And it's like, no, I don't want to do that. I want I want the motion to determine what the action is, and the action would be turn the screen on and show the calendar. And that sounds like something that Task or a related app like that could do pretty easily. So
I would say another thing to consider that might be simpler is Amazon's Fire tablets. They have the option of having the Alexa dock, which turns your tablet essentially into a smart display, similar to the Nest screens. So maybe consider that as an option, or whatever the Amazon equivalent of the Nest smart screens are. There might be a simpler way of doing it than a full Android distribution. Maybe consider the Nest screens that may have what you need, and they definitely have always on options, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, right. Do you, with those devices, have the ability to say always show a calendar or something? That I don't know.
Yeah.
It sounds like
obviously
critical.
The geek in me wants to take this a step further and say a Raspberry Pi with a 7-inch LCD display, and essentially run a web page or your web calendar on that. That might be another way of doing it, but there will probably be some assembly required there.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I was trying to look up. Is like, if I were to take one of my portable monitors, I could maybe hook it up to, well, I wouldn't go with a Chromecast, but maybe like a Raspberry Pi or something, like, or just buy some really cheap tablets.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
And we're back to square one.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the 2019 Fire tablet, and mind you, this is a tablet that really does not need to be fancy at all. Like, you're literally, you want a simple computer with a screen, and that's all you really need it for. Because if it's just showing a calendar, it's like you hardly need anything even current. Like, you get a 7-inch Fire tablet, 2019 release, $50 on Amazon, less if you find secondhand.
But I would say don't consider the Royole tablet. It's foldable. Yeah. I don't think it suits the needs here.
I realize that it's really tempting to get the Royole because it comes with cheese, but don't do that. Okay.
It's
a bad idea. Bad. All right. I hope that's helpful, Wes. Let us know how it goes. Maybe take a picture of what you come up with, or send us a video or something. We'll put it in a future episode. Jonathan from Vermont writes in, says, I've done some looking into getting an AA wireless device. This is the Android Auto wireless device that Ron reviewed a couple of weeks ago that he'd been waiting for months for, that everybody seemed to enjoy. Jonathan says, I'm looking into getting one. One of the major flaws that the last I knew that they had not fixed is that it can only be paired with one device at a time. My wife and I both have Android phones and both use our vehicle with an Android Auto head unit. From what I have read and seen online, you can only pair one device with the unit at a time without going back through the entire setup process again to connect a different device. I've heard they want to fix this in firmware, but until they do, it is kind of a showstopper for me. Here's to hoping they fix this issue soon. And I agree, Jonathan, if you got more than one person in your household that's driving the vehicle and want to connect to it, that is kind of that's a big deal, possibly a deal breaker. So cross fingers that they address that at some point. That doesn't seem terribly impossible to do, but what do I know? I don't create these things. I don't know what kind of work it takes to do something like that. But thanks for the heads up, because I know a lot of people who are watching and listening to All About Android have been interested. I mean, you guys have been emailing a lot about it, been very interested about the AA wireless. And I'm curious next week when Ron's in, if we remember to ask him about this, because he and his wife, I wonder if his wife connects to it as well. And if so, how that goes. And finally, we have the email of the week. There we go. I wondered if maybe the people who toot the horns went home already, but no, they're there. Steve, they are. Thank you. Okay, you've made up for the delay. Stephen Miller writes in to say, I have my Pixel 3 XL connected Bluetooth to my Nest Hub to play white noise overnight. Just this week, the white noise application started shutting off between 3 to 4 a.m. every night. My guess is it's time-based depending on when I start the media. At first, I thought this was a problem with the White Noise Pro application I use from TimoSoft. Actually, that's the White Noise app that I use as well. I love it. I've used it for years. So last night, I tried just playing a white noise sound from YouTube Music. The same thing happened. That's curious. So it happens regardless of the app. Okay, good to know. Mental note. He says, I've been using my phone connected to a Bluetooth speaker of some sort to play white noise for years, and I've only just this week began to have problems. Began to have this problem. I'm a light sleeper, and when the noise stops, I immediately wake up and have to restart the player. That really sucks. I'm sorry. He says, I thought it might have something to do with Android aggressively shutting down apps overnight. Can you guys please help, as I would like to once again be able to have a full night's sleep without waking at 4 a.m. That is a true bummer. There's some clues there. It's not the app, because if it was the app, then it wouldn't have happened with YouTube Music. So it happened regardless of the app. What do you guys think? I feel like this is like a mystery that we can solve.
The next test needs to be, is it the phone?
Yeah,
because he's saying he's got it paired with a Nest. So if he can keep a phone and a Bluetooth speaker playing overnight, then it might be something to do with the Nest.
Oh, I missed that thread, but you're right. Now he has it paired with the Nest. Before he had it paired with a Bluetooth speaker, and when it was paired with the Bluetooth speaker, it didn't do this. But now that it's paired with the Nest, it is. And so
it could be like that obnoxious thing Netflix does. Like, are you still watching?
Are you still there?
Like, Netflix, did I stutter? You know, like keep playing me the TV show.
There's no possible way you're still here listening, so I'm just going to go ahead and shut it off for you, okay?
Right.
I wonder. Yeah, and I'm also curious because he doesn't mention in here if the problem started once he began connecting to the Nest Hub to do this. Like, I wonder, like, has it been working with the Nest Hub for a while, or did the problem appear when he started doing this with the Nest Hub? I don't really know, but yeah. And are there any settings to refer to check on that? I mean, I think the thought that it might be some sort of a sleep mode on the phone, like there's something there. But how do you check for something like that? I don't even know. Or maybe the phone is getting some sort of an update. Ooh, one thing that could be happening. Ooh, I wonder if this is it. I have had it happen where I am doing something or listening to something on an app that suddenly gets updated in the Play Store. And when it gets updated in the Play Store, then it ejects me out of the app because it needs to finalize the app. Right? It needs to push through the update. And if you have your settings set so that your apps update at a certain time of day, or when I'm not familiar with what the settings are as far as the Play Store and updating apps, but I know there's some control over when updates happen. Maybe that's happening, maybe at 4 a.m., but not every single night.
Or it could it's more likely to be the Nest updating every single night at that time. I don't know what the release schedule is for Nests, but those are sort of silent updates that users seldom notice. So I wouldn't be surprised if it were that. But again, we're here with limited information on that.
Yeah, totally. But I'm curious. That's why I put it in here. I knew that we probably wouldn't have the exact answer, but sometimes I like to throw these in here because it's kind of like a mystery to solve. And we might not be able to come up with the solution to the mystery, but you might be able to. So AAA@twit.tv, let us know what you think. And maybe we can throw a few ideas to Steven next week on the show and see if we can figure this out. And then we can sound the horns, not only because of email of the week, but because victory.
Oh, that was some dirty trick.
Well, but I said the thing. I did say the thing that normally makes the horns sound. So, I gave you what you needed, Burke. All right, Steven, I hope that's helpful, and hopefully we have more coming at you next week. We will wait and find out. But that is it for this week's episode of All About Android. So much fun hanging out with my friends. Matteo, Doni, appreciate you so much, and totally appreciate you staying up late once again to join us on the show. Tell people what you got going on. What do you want people to know?
Well, as always, I continue to be an opinionist when it comes to everything mobile and, more importantly, everything about goat culture. You can follow me on the Tech Travel Geeks YouTube channel, where we cover consumer electronics, which my friend Lukash and I consider to be the things that make the travel experience better, and occasionally some of our drone footage and road trip vlogs from when we travel. And you can follow me on Twitter at Todoleo is my handle. The same handle, Todoleo, is on Instagram and everywhere. You tend to have a handle. So we do also have a podcast, which will be starting up in the coming weeks when the weather gets a bit worse. We'll be starting that up again. And it would be a pleasure to have Juan back on as a guest, as well as you, Jason. So keep an eye on that. We'll do the live stream on YouTube, and then I'll edit the audio and publish that in the feed at a later date. So again, thanks for having me back on. It's always a pleasure being on All About Android. And so over to you.
Thank you, Matteo. Always a pleasure, and thank you. Good luck on the upcoming podcast. That's exciting. Juan, let's see here. What you got in the works? You always are super busy, and you always got a lot of things happening. So what do you want?
I'm all over the place, but I am. Yeah. I will absolutely do your podcast, Matteo. I'm genuinely being serious here. I've always appreciated your voice in these conversations. I've had so much fun with your previous appearances on All About Android, and like I said, back to the App Arena days and the goat gags, and just I'm just really glad we got to hang out for a bit. So definitely keep me in the loop. I would be happy. I would be honored to jump in on one of your podcasts. I'm all over the place. I'm going to be doing a stream with Newegg to talk about some next gen Asus gaming hardware. I'm going to be doing a series on reviews.org talking about net neutrality issues with carrier apps and messaging. Kind of an addition to the conversation we just had about RCS. On my own channel, I've been tackling a little bit more audio gear just because of all of the interest in things like lossless streaming. I just published a guide on buying a USB DAC, just because we've got to replace all those headphone jacks that companies cut out of our phones. So I'm all over the place. It's good to be busy. So you can keep up with all the shenanigans, somegadgetguy.com. You can follow me on the socials, somegadgetguy. Lots of techie, nerdy conversations to be had.
Right on. Juan, always a pleasure. Great to get you on. And as folks in the chat were saying, super cool to cross the streams today with both of you guys on. Uncle Big said having Juan and Matteo on the same show is a bit like crossing the streams. Fantastic.
It's so good.
I totally agree. It was a lot of fun. Thank you guys. And thank you to Burke at the studio for everything that you do behind the scenes, and coordinating the horn players, and having a portable Ron set aside to say things like "Holy cow" on demand. Really appreciate it. Also, thank you to Victor, who is also behind the scenes, editing the show, publishing it, making sure that you actually get it into your podcast feed each and every week. I appreciate the work you do, Victor. I'm just doing shows here on Twit, so, and also producing shows like This Week in Google and Twit, but we got Tech News Weekly this Thursday, got some cool interviews coming up. So just find me at twit.tv as you have with this show. Don't forget, Club Twit is our ad-free subscription tier. All of our Twitch shows with no ads whatsoever, all of them ad-free. You also get an exclusive Twit Plus podcast feed with lots of extra content. Things like pre and post show from All About Android, for example, where often we get into some really great conversations that go on for a while. It's truly bonus content. So we throw that in the Twit Plus podcast feed. And then a members-only Discord channel, which is just so much fun to get in there and talk with people who are really engaging with the content and have genuine questions about each and every show and every technology and everything. $7 a month, twit.tv/clubtwit, and you can get in on that. Hope to see you there. But that is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We publish this show every Tuesday evening. twit.tv/AAA is the show page on the web where you can find everything you need to know. Subscribe, and you won't miss a single episode ever. But that's it for this week. We'll see you and Ron and Flo next time on another episode of All About Android. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you are interested in checking out all things smart home and Internet of Things, then you should check out Smart Tech Today, the podcast I, Micah Sargent, do with my co-host Matthew Casanelli. It's all about the smart home and improving your automations.